After a major disaster, up to 40% of small businesses don't reopen at all. In Rhode Island, over half of our workers work for small businesses, and small businesses, after disasters, they don't have risk prevention staff, generally speaking. They have often less insurance, less access to capital. So even if they weren't physically damaged, if they're losing revenue because people aren't coming, things are shut down, that has a huge impact on small businesses. So, and as we know with our climate change data and our experiences over the last decade, we are seeing more extreme weather events. So the Division of Planning picked up on this as being a really serious risk and wanted to address this situation, came to the Office of Housing and Community Development for a disaster recovery grant, and we've been working together on this project ever since. As we scoped it out, we made some strategic decisions. One of them was to fund size the definition of small business for Rhode Island. So we went with 50 employees or less because we're in Rhode Island, and that's still over 20% of our workers fall in that category. And those are the businesses that are often the hardest to reach, and they're the most at risk. And so that's who we decided we wanted to work with. We really wanted to focus on generating solutions. And we wanted to make it different from what's already out there. There's a lot of data out there on continuity and making sure that your operations continue. But we wanted to focus really on long-term risk and looking forward and looking at what solutions are, not just from a structural perspective. There's a lot of weatherproofing, elevating information out there, but also logistics, feasibility, all the pieces for small businesses. So we wanted to look at that. Few other things that we made decisions about. One was certainly to incorporate the climate change data we have, the sea level rise data, but to lead with extreme weather events and to talk about that and put the brochure, all the information in that language, as opposed to long-term language on things like sea level rise when our target audience is focused on making payroll, what's happening this week, this month, and keeping their doors open, staying profitable. With regard to the solutions that we wanted this project to generate, we wanted to make sure that they gave a relative sense of cost, not only in dollars, but because we're talking about small business, in terms of space and in terms of staffing. So those were some of the parameters that we put on. Let's provide real workable solutions for small businesses. The team came up with a suite of about 40 solutions that you'll hear more about. Half of them came from the businesses that they interviewed, and about the other half came from the literature and the information that's already out there. So we were really looking for what are good examples. Let's help transition from what the problem is to what the solutions are and what's really workable, particularly for this group of small businesses. We had a really broad, strong team. So it was led by the Division of Planning, Caitlin Greeley and Roberta Grouch, who both wanted to be here today and couldn't. As well as RPS on the private side was our vendor and led a team with a number of sub-consultants, including, as Pam Rubinoff here from URI. Pam played a huge role in this project. And as many of you know, we encourage the use of steering committees to help with the collaboration, make sure that projects are stronger and that there's input and throughout the project. So we had a number of people from a number of your agencies, Liz Stone, Sean O'Rourke, Jim Boyd, Melinda Hopkins, sorry, blanking. We also had Stuart Fryman from REMA, Doris Blanchard from Commerce Corporation, and is there anyone else on that has a seat at the table? Some of our other, I'm sure I'm missing somebody, so hopefully it'll come up, but we also have the town of South Kingstown represented and Newport Chamber of Commerce represented on our steering committee.
Laura, I was going to ask you, and you mentioned Pam, is this like the culmination of the work that Pam was talked to us about before on small business resilience, or is it a separate effort?
It's the same one.
Okay, continuation of the same. Okay.
And when we scoped this out, Westerly Chamber of Commerce, who spoke to this group a number of years ago, we did get excellent feedback from them. We've consulted with DBR, and some others as we scoped this out to come up with a scope of work. The results, which you'll hear more about from the expert here in a few minutes, are 8 guides tailored to 8 different industries. They do focus on those solutions and helping businesses identify which solutions work for them. And insurance, because that surfaced as being such a key part of the need for small businesses. There's also a draft report that will be coming out shortly on recommendations for state agencies and municipalities about how we can further assist small businesses to reduce this risk, and then how to help them through disaster after disaster. So that is another piece of this project that's really intended for state and local government use as opposed to actually for small businesses directly. This project ends at the end of this month. So at this point, the team is really transitioning this over and giving it to the state agencies. So at the end of this presentation, we'll be looking to you for suggestions on how to move this forward. There's been some visioning about transitioning it online, and we've had a couple of meetings with Do It about the possibility of making that happen. At this point, that's not funded. We didn't have the time or the money to fit it into this particular project, but the data is there, and we'd like to move that forward potentially. But really to get the guides, which will be available hard copy and electronically, into the hands of small businesses so that this information can actually be used and reduce our risk going forward. So at this point, I will turn this over to Gabrielle McGrath, who did by far the lion's share of the work on this project. So.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. I also wanted to acknowledge Kelly Lee, who is the executive director at RPS. She was the technical advisor on our project team as well. And I personally just really enjoyed working on this project. I'm actually from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I live in Connecticut, so it gave me a real opportunity to learn the state of Rhode Island and actually get to know personally a lot of the small business owners in the state and really understand what their needs are and to be able to create a product that could really help them. As Laura mentioned, this project was geared towards businesses with 50 employees or less, but really the businesses that we actually spoke to were ones that had probably 5 employees or less, to be honest. So these were really small businesses where you have 1 or 2 people doing the lion's share of the work, and we wanted to come up with something that could really help them. So this is our project team here, and again, Lauren kind of mentioned this, but again, led by the Division of Statewide Planning, we had our steering committee. Below in the room is another consultant out of Cheshire, Connecticut. We also work with CABA, which is the Climate Action Business Association of Massachusetts. And of course, the Rhode Island Small Business Development Center was a lot of help as well, and Spalding Environmental Association. So this figure captures kind of where we went with this project. There were a lot of different tasks that kind of got us to our end goal of creating the risk reduction guides that you see in front of you. And you'll notice that they are not all the same. So some of you have certain ones in front of you. There were 8 created. I presented about 24 copies there on the table. So you each have a different guide in front of you. So if one looks different from your neighbor, they're not exactly the same. And as Laura mentioned, we do have that recommendations report that will be coming out shortly that is really geared towards this group with some recommendations for the state of how you can help the small businesses. One other thing to mention in this figure is some of these tasks were geared towards statewide use. Like for our outreach task and for our marketing, we really looked at throughout the state, who information we could find out about these small businesses, what people wanted to learn about, what were the needs. Marketing, once we had the guides draft finished, we really reached out throughout the state to find out what people thought of them and to make some tweaks and adjustments. But our vulnerability assessments and our risk reduction options that we captured, those were put.
Mike and then Mike. You decide which Mike.
Mayor, you guys took the lead on planning and your vision was you guys took the lead on the implementation and the follow-up because there's a lot of good topics going around, but who's actually going to put them down on paper and make sure you have a plan to get this information to it and continue, right? Because you can't just throw these out to everyone once and we're going to follow up.
And I think we can certainly play a role. One of the biggest problems we have is that we have the majority of our funding is federal highway, and the majority is state funding that we can use for something like this. We do have some ability to do it through our planning information and our public outreach tasks, but we have much more of a funding has to work with our communication ability. So there's a piece of this, but there's also there's a piece of it in terms of state funding that we can certainly use to move this forward. for, in terms of leading the effort, how we move this forward. And one of the things I had suggested, somebody had suggested it should maybe be a subgroup of EC4. I had suggested that perhaps this was something State Planning Council could take and move out, because a lot of the agencies, and even more agencies than here at EC4 are at the table at State Planning Council. So I'm not jumping into the discussion because there's no interest, but we already, at the steering committee, had a lot of this, we were trying to kind of broaden the discussion today.
So, Mary, you point about the State Planning Council, the other thing that it brings is the cities and towns. So now you have the local capacity to also disseminate information and whatnot. But you're doing 50 copies of each one of the brochures.
500 actually.
Pardon?
500 each.
Yeah. Do you have a one-pager on the whole thing that says where to go get information instead of I'm going to grab it and lose it in the drawer? But if
We
I
have
get
talked a lot
it
about
7 or 8
creating-
times, I might actually go look when I'm thinking about it instead of when it gets handed to me.
Yeah, so we plan to put some information on the website, you know, of the guides on how to use them. But then also there's a lot of discussion of creating like a one-page like hard postcard or maybe a magnet that people put in their fridge that would have, you know, the reference to the website and some like just the key information for people to look at.
To me, that's probably the most important next project. Because 500 copies of the brochures or 500 recyclables and others until they need it, like Jim said, or there's a disaster. Now where do I go find something? But if you keep getting the postcard and you keep putting the magnets up there and you walk by it, and all of a sudden it sticks, well, I should go look and see what's there. When you're not busy doing something else.
Yeah, we thought about, there were a couple of really good ideas that came out from the table where this information could be good for it. Maybe in the event of an emergency or something upcoming, one had been, you know, they have those crank flashlights, put the website, the location on the side of that so that people can actually grab for that when they lose power. Oh, here, now I know where I should go and take a quick look, but then the question with the website is, so
On the
then
website.
you lose power, can you get there?
Yeah.
On the website, so then you have a short, you know, we've talked about maybe having a short version of some, these are some basic steps that apply to everybody.
And we also did talk about the guides are really geared towards more pre-disaster, so what you do to help yourself before you get impacted, not really response necessarily.
Jan, I'd like to, as I think about this, I want to make sure that we're recognizing all of the value of the project and of the work. There's an enormous value to the small business owner, per se, but there's also an enormous value to the state
Great.
and to the overall community. I guess eventually as money flows to FEMA, probably. That is having a convenience store that is open and able to dispense water so that FEMA trucks don't need to bring in however many communities will reduce the overall bill that Rhode Islanders will pay and that Rhode Islanders will pass on. And I don't know enough to know how we include that value in this work, but I want to make sure we're recognizing it.
Like, you get it back eventually, you know.
I want to make sure we're at least including it notionally as we think about this.
Yeah, great, yeah. Liz is telling me we have to move on soon. Let me just ask, Laura, is there more funding that we can get for the next phase of this project?
We are pretty much out of funding. I do want to acknowledge that both senators are represented here from our congressional delegation that did bring in disaster money after the 2010 floods and after Hurricane Sandy. So we are really close to wrapping that up. There's really very little left, and part of this was time constraint in terms of this project and getting this in.
And then, oh, sorry. So,
But certainly, if a group gets together, you know, we'd be happy to come to the table and see what we can do.
And just, I mean, if there is going to be sort of a public rollout and unveiling, because of the state planning council, we are in the hurricane season. And the peak of the hurricane season is still several months away, so this is an opportunity to sort of get these things out in preparation for mid-September.
agreed. I know there's been an ask recently to have some, when governor go out and see some resiliency projects. I just wonder if there's a way to package a few of these things together. It does strike me, let me just make a policy comment. Because we have Reggie, we have money coming to the state every year to do energy efficiency and to have specific audits of entities. So we need something on the resiliency side where we have single funding stream for funding stream coming in, and even because something like this, I don't think, unless you have more intense outreach, if these are wonderful, and we'll get them out, and we want to work in every way to publicize, but in terms of really having these implemented, it seems like we need some incentive or some hand-holding or some policy hook to get people, even though it's in their own interest, to say, I'm so busy, bills are running your store.
Yeah, at this point, this is entirely voluntary and there's not a national grid type energy efficiency program for businesses to implement. Right, that's something that, REMA did a report on under Rep. Carson's recommendation.
Flood on a task force.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. All right, there's a couple more comments actually.
So, one of your biggest findings was insurance policies.
That was gonna be
Envelopes show up in the mail in every small business with a renewal. And you have a Rhode Island Independent Insurance Agents Association that has been taking part in some of the resiliency activities going on in the state. And insurance companies tend to reach out to their policyholders that are in areas that are being impacted. So that might be the first place for getting the message out, is right through the insurance agent.
Awesome idea. Any contacts, if anyone can forward us contacts or help make that connection for us? 'Cause
I definitely think we need a outreach and communications plan for this space. Get right on that, Laura. I think so, though, don't you? I mean, we have a bunch of ideas, things that we can implement through aligning other things that we're doing or through other entities, but we also need a game plan to keep it. And, one launch isn't going to do it. We need to keep it at the forefront. And unfortunately, a lot of people may not be paying attention until after something happens. Right. Well, I'm sorry that we have to move on, but this is amazing work. Gabrielle, that was impressive. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Laura.